Hi, okay, so I was asked to make a video to explain what's the difference between MRS and MRTS within microeconomics. So let's start with MRS. MRS, or marginal rate of substitution, is a ratio where we consider or when we look at the consumer. MRTS, on the other hand, is a ratio where we look at the producer. Okay, so that's the first difference between the two. So let's look at MRS, marginal rate of substitution. Let me just get an example in front of us. Okay, so the example that we have here is we're looking at a consumer that needs to decide between two goods. How much of two goods is he going to purchase or consume? So first important aspect in this graph, when we're looking at this graph, is the indifference curve. So this indifference curve is an indication of the utility that the consumer gains or receives from consuming clothes and food. And on each point on this indifference curve, the value of that utility or satisfaction is exactly the same. So in this example, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 baskets. Each basket has a different quantity or ratio for the two goods. So for A, we have 16 clothes and 1 food. At D, we have 6 clothes and 3 food. Okay, so now what MRS does, or marginal rate of substitution, here it is, marginal rate of substitution, what it does is it shows us how much are you willing to give of one good and take and get from the other good. Okay, so how much clothes are you willing to let go in order for you to get one more unit of food? Because maybe you want more food. Okay, maybe that's the basket that you prefer. Okay, so let's quickly look at how do we write this down. How do we, if we have a equation, how do we get that value for MRS? So the marginal rate of substitution is the difference in y, and the y in this case is clothes, it's the y-axis, and divided by the difference in q, which in this case is food. Okay, so it's just the difference between the difference if we move from basket A to basket B. So say for example you stand in a shopping center, in a grocery store. You have two baskets. You need to decide how much of food are you going to take and how much clothes are you going to take. But the ratio for each of these baskets are different. But the total utility that you gain from them is exactly the same. Okay. So it's down to personal preference as well. How much are you going to take of are you going to choose basket A or basket B? If you choose basket B, that means basket B has 6 less units of clothes but 1 more unit of food. Then your marginal rate of substitution will be a value of 6. So it's the difference. Let's go back again to this graph. It's the difference between the two market baskets from A to B, so it's minus 6 divided by the 1. So you gain 1 and you lose 6. Okay, and that's exactly the marginal rate of substitution equation that we have here. So instead of using the value y, or the letter y, we use the letter C and F. Okay, so that C is clothes and F is your food. Okay, so we give away 6 clothes for 1 food to get an MRS of 6. And the negative value in front of this equation is just to make the value positive. Okay, because you give away 6 units of clothes, minus 6. So minus 6 multiplied by a minus gives us a positive value, and the change in food is a positive. Okay, so that's the value there. So that's MRS. If we look at MRTS, we are going from the consumer, we are moving to the producer. So we're looking at production. So let me just quickly get my example in front. Here we go. So similarly to the consumer, we also have a a graph, and in this case, instead of having an indifference curve, we have an isoquant. Now the isoquant is an indication of output, so it's a output value. Now if you are producing any good, let's say tables or chairs or coffee, you need inputs. Okay, so the inputs that we're looking at here is capital and labor. So you need a machine and you need someone to press the start button. Okay, and that, depending on the quantity of each of these that you have, you can increase output as you go along. Okay, so for this example, we have 3 isoquant curves. The first one has a value of 55. That means any combination of capital and labor which falls on this isoquant will give the same output. And then if we increase output, we require more of both, more inputs of both capital and labor. But if it's on this isoquant, we will have an output of 55. So you can have 3 capital and you can have 2 labor, or you can have 1 capital and you can have 5 labor. The output will still be 75, the same value. And if you increase even more, we can have an output of 90. Okay. So MRTS is the rate that you substitute capital for 1 additional labor. So in this case, if we move from this point here to that point there on the isoquant, same output level as here, we give away 5 minus 3 is we give away 2 capital, so it's minus 2 capital for 1 more additional unit of labor. Okay, so that's MRTS. It's a change in capital, or the change in Y, divided by the change in labor, or the change in X, and that gives us our marginal rate of technical substitution, or MRTS value. Okay, so that's just a brief explanation to keep it short and simple on the difference between MRS and MRTS. If we work from a figure with 2 inputs, the first one is a consumer, MRS is a consumer with an indifference curve, and the MRTS is a producer with an isoquant. And again, we'll work with 2 inputs, not 2 products, but 2 inputs. Hope that this did help you somewhat.